Murray being significantly better than Michael Vick. It made a lot of news yesterday. Here it was if you missed it.
He's a better runner, he's more dynamic, and he's a much better thrower of the football. I think he's better on both accounts than Michael Vick, who was a unanimous #1 overall pick. Michael Vick had a really strong arm, a howitzer. Okay, Josh Allen-esque. I mean, this dude could throw it. But as a runner and a passer, Kyler is better than Michael Vick was.
Listen, it is a weak quarterback class. If you took last year's class and this year's quarterback class, I would rank it Darnold, Baker, Josh Rosen, then Kyler Murray in terms of like dynamic playmakers. Now, I like Dwayne Haskins is the guy I'd build around. I don't think he's nearly as athletic or dynamic as Kyler Murray. I think you can make an argument. NFL people, I think if you pinned NFL people down, they'd go, everybody now is on the Baker train. He did finish third with a loaded roster. Cleveland's got a lot of players. Jets have none. Darnold, Baker, Rosen, Kyler Murray. You get a lot of arguments with that. I'm more of a Dwayne Haskins guy who I think needs work and needs to sit for a year and is not very athletic and doesn't have great feet, but is 6'3", 220. I think size matters. But exciting is a really powerful thing with a combine in the draft because exciting gives you hope. Johnny Manziel, little tiny Johnny Manziel, was exciting, ended up going in the first round. And the momentum ball is now rolling downhill, and it may just roll to #1. Again, I think he's an NFL quarterback. I'll take the bigger guy because I think size does matter. You know, we always go with the exception, but when you start hearing Michael Vick and Russell Wilson in the same breath with Kyler Murray, that's how drafts work. That is how drafts work. Listen, drafts are inexact sciences. That's just the way it works. I just finished up the Ian O'Connor book on Bill Belichick. They've whiffed on a lot of draft picks, a lot of them. And they're not all Belichick because he's not the scout. Okay, he relies on certain scouts and certain executives. But you start getting Joel Klatt come out and say he's Michael Vick, and then I hear people say Russell Wilson, who I think both those guys are exceptions. They're not the rule. My guess is Kyler Murray is Giants have a 6th pick. You know, Jacksonville 7, Miami 13, Arizona 1. I think it's a real possibility. I think the momentum is totally on his side. I don't think he's as good as Baker Mayfield. I don't think he's as good as Sam Darnold. I don't think he's as good as Josh Rosen. And I think long-term, he's more dynamic, but I would take Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State. But you can sense it now. You can just sense the momentum, and Michael Vick and Russell Wilson and Kyle Murray, same sentence. Watch out. Here's Joy with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
So everyone in the Celtics locker room appeared to be frustrated after last night's loss, and it showed in the post-game comments. First, Brad Stevens said he thinks the Celtics aren't committing to defense and are taking shortcuts. And Kyrie didn't seem to be in the mood to discuss the loss at length. When he was told about Stevens' comments, he was quite brief.
Brad talked about just defensively, guys been taking shortcuts. So do you see that, and how do you guys fix things like that at this point in the season, do you feel like?
I don't know, it's up to Brad.
That's up to Brad.
Yeah, no, I guess. You could say that, but it's not a great quote.
I mean, not to just pick one tiny example, but this is why yesterday I said I liked Toronto a little more than where you had them.
Yes. People now this morning are all like, Colin, Toronto crushed them. It's February. Last year, Toronto was crushing everybody in February, too.
Toronto is traditionally a great regular season team.
That shrinks.
That shrinks in the big moments.
Cincinnati Bengals shrink. Toronto shrinks. Some organizations shrink in the heat.
But they do have Kawhi.
Yeah, he's better than DeRozan.
Siakam is playing great.
Yes, he is.
They added Gasol. They still have Kyle Lowry.
Don't have the coach of the year, though.
Okay, well, apparently the coach of the year has some adjustments to make, according to Kyrie Irving.
All right.
I don't know. The Celtics they have a lot going on right now. I feel like the Celtics should not be having these problems at this point in the season. That's what's troublesome to me. Now, obviously they have an incredible amount of talent.
Yeah.
And
we got 2 months left
last year, and there is some time left. But I do think that they need to sort this out. They don't want to be going into the postseason with this kind of energy, if you will.
You know,
and they got to figure out how to get Kyrie Irving in the mix with this.
You know, something that's been thrown out there that's a pretty fascinating belief, and Chris Broussard's talked about this and other NBA guys, is Brad Stevens. This sounds counterintuitive. Brad Stevens works better when he's got B players. He struggles with stars. His offense is not built for a ball-dominant star, and it doesn't sound right. Like, you put Kyrie on the team, they'll be way better. But we now have this year and last year where Kyrie left, and they're actually a more efficient basketball team without Kyrie. So I know fans hear that, and I've said this for years about John Wall. John Wall's talented. John Wall gets hurt every year, and they win more without him. Like, some guys they're not winning players. They're just great. Carmelo is not a winning player. He's just a great talent.
Well, if I was a Celtics fan, I would not be excited to hear that, because the NBA, it's about talent. And you can have a system, and that's all fun and adorable,
yes.
But if you should build your system around the talent and stars that you have. You have to make adjustments, too. This isn't college where you have some rigid thing, and even in college, you make adjustments for the personnel that you have. It's just that's not a recipe for success.
No, but
in the end, maybe you'll have a great regular season. Maybe you'll make a nice run in the playoffs.
Well, Kyrie is historically he is a score first point guard, and take out Steph Curry, who's the greatest shooter in the history of the world. Score first point guards don't have a lot of titles. Marbury, Iverson, Stevie Francis. Kyrie Irving's got one thanks to LeBron. Score first point guards historically don't win titles.
Some would argue that Kyrie played a pretty crucial role in the end of that series. I think that you have to make adjustments around the personnel that you have. A great system is nice to have, and it'll sustain you in the years that you don't have great talent. But you have to figure that out. You got to work with what you have. So Howie Roseman announced today that the Eagles will not place the franchise tag on quarterback Nick Foles. So this allows Foles to become an unrestricted free agent on March 13th when the new league year opens.
Awesome.
It also obviously ends the speculation of what the Eagles' next step would be with Foles and Carson Wentz.
I love what Philadelphia is doing here. So often, teams like Pittsburgh with Antonio Brown. Okay, 6th round. We got 75 touchdowns with him. Just get a pick and move on. The Eagles are saying, listen, Nick Foles, the career backup, he's a Super Bowl MVP, beats Brady. That is a crescendo. That is the top of Nick Foles. Don't lose a lot of sleep. Like pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. Move off Nick Foles. Howie Roseman's like, listen, we got to get him out of the building because there are players in that locker room that like him more than Wentz.
Yeah, who are loyal to him.
Yeah, so let's go with a guy that we gave up picks for, who's super talented with a better arm. But Howie's basically saying, I got about 20 guys in the locker room that like Nick. Let's move him on.
I'm kind of with you on that. I liked what the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson and Joe Flacco.
That's right.
And you might be right about that with the Steelers. It might be just it's time. You want to kind of hold out and see if you can get a little bit more, but eventually you need to make a decision because it's this constant story that's just going and going and going and going and going, and you can just end it and move forward. And there is something to just clearing the air and starting to heal and move forward. And this was a conversation about what they were going to do with him.
And the Steelers and the Eagles have proven they draft really well.
What do you think about the Giants?
No, I don't. If I'm the Giants, I want to go bigger than Nick Foles. I want to find the next Carson Wentz. So I think, you know what I think this kind of works for? Kind of works for Jacksonville. You know what you do in Jacksonville? You go buy Nick Foles, then you draft Haskins, and you just take care of the quarterback situation. Because Haskins is a guy that needs footwork upgrades, and you sit him for a year, which I think you should sit, outside of your Andrew Luck and Elway, I'd sit all these guys. If I was Jacksonville, I'd get Nick, then draft a quarterback, say, Nick, you're starting for 2 years. Nick's not a big money guy. And Nick, if you said, Nick, you're our starter for 2 years, Jacksonville's low pressure, low expectations.
Yeah, I think Nick just wants to play at this point. So finally, tonight at 8 p.m., 7 Central on Fox, it's the season finale of The Masked Singer.
This is a massive hit,
yes.
Like a massive hit.
We're finally going to learn the identities of the 3 remaining contestants, the peacock, the bee, and the monster.
Spoiler alert, I'm not one of them.
Oh.
This has been the surprise hit in TV. You know the other one? Remember the show Biggest Loser?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that show before it went on the air, and I said, that's mean. You're taking heavy-set people and calling them losers, and everybody's like, no, it's going to be the biggest hit ever. And for like 12 years it was.
Yeah, it was a good show.
I heard about this show before it went on the air, and I thought, that's odd. It's a massive hit. That's why I should never be a TV executive.
Well, I love it because I've always wanted to be a mascot, so It would be like a dream. I can't sing, so it would be very obvious to pick me out.
You and I should do an album.
I can't think of a worse idea.
Because I can't sing either.
Let's
do
sing.
that.
I used to sing when I was younger in church, and then as soon as I hit puberty, it just
Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga did their thing.
Right.
In celebration of that, because we can't sing, we should do an album called "We Can't Sing."
I think it'll be a hit. I mean, who wouldn't want to listen to two people who can't sing?
You should do that same song as they did.
Well, I'm saying the Masked Singer.
Shallow. I sing "Shallow" in my car, and I am convinced that I sound exactly the same.
I think I sound like Bryan Adams. You remember Bryan Adams? Yeah, touch that knife. I think I sounded just like him, to be honest with you.
Oh, anyway, it's tonight at 8 p.m., 7 Central on Fox, the finale of The Masked Singer.
Yes. Massive hit.
Yes.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Albert Breer's around the corner at the NFL Combine. By the way, I love Charles Barkley, and I love Shaq. And they're on TV, and they're often better than the game that they appear before. There are nights when I want to watch Barkley and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie more than the game. But I will say this about Shaq and Charles Barkley. Sometimes they forget there's Google, and I can Google stuff, and they try to rewrite history a little bit. So Shaq was talking about LeBron's teammates who have not liked all these rumors about trades. Here he was.
It's no time to sit and sulk. If you don't want to be traded, you don't want to be talked about, step up. LeBron is used to playing with guys that hit shots and make him look good. He's not having that right now. Look, I was traded 6 times. I never cried about it. You move on.
Okay, I love Shaq, but he got traded by the Lakers, and he's pissed for years and held grudges. You can Google it. Okay, Charles Barkley demanded a trade. You can Google it. I love them both. They're amazing. I will never blame an NBA player, old or young, star or reserved, for being bothered getting traded and having your name in the paper. It hurts. It's no fun. Nobody wants to read they're expendable, especially now in the culture of basketball where it's like, 19, 20-year-olds, 17-year-olds are being pampered a little bit. That's the new culture. It's tough. Nobody wants to, nobody, I wouldn't want to read my name in the paper. Colin's being traded by a reporter and a host to be named later. Nobody wants that.
It's not a new thing to not want to be traded.
It's awful. It's the worst part of the NBA.
They get traded in other sports too.
I know, but
it's not a pleasant experience.
Yeah, I mean, I get trades, but in the NBA, you got guys playing for 10 teams. I mean, you got guys who are good guys who are just bouncing around like furniture. So Barkley he engineered a trade, and Shaq didn't love being traded, and he held a grudge with Kobe for a long time, and he was mad at the Lakers for a long time.
We tend to do this, though. Like, as we age, we tend to kind of remember things differently. Like we never had a problem with anything, and we just toughed through it and never complained.
Have you ever gone to therapy?
Yes.
And when I went to therapy one time, and he said, when you go to therapy, therapists will, at least mine did, said, we tend to take little tiny moments in our childhood and amplify them. And it was just like you got into an argument at a merry-go-round when you were 7, and it stuck with you forever, and like nobody else thought it was a big deal. We tend to amplify moments and forget moments. Sometimes it's a protective mechanism. Something bad we bury deep within our psyche. Barkley and Shaq had big egos, got ticked off all the time, didn't want to be traded, and wanted things their way. And that's what young guys want today. And I love Barkley, and I love Shaq, and I love Kenny, and I love Ernie, and they're amazing. They're better than the games most of the time. All right, Combine Albert Breer around the corner. Now, I'm your stockbroker. Time to play buy, sell, hold.
Time to buy, sell, or hold.
I'd buy that for $1.
Colin will decide if he'll buy it, sell,
I want you to sell,
or hold.
Please hold.
Buy, sell, or hold. Tom Brady will pass Michael Jordan in championships.
Mike went 6 for 6. Tom's been to 9 and has 6. One of my best sources close to Belichick told me about 10 days ago, I told you on the air, Belichick strongly believes that next year will be one of his most athletic teams in a decade. They have 12 draft picks, and they drafted 3 kids last year who they loved and could have started but got hurt. This is going to be a new look Patriots. They're going to be young and significantly more athletic. They're already one of the favorites in Las Vegas. I thought this year was the year to beat them. So, John,
Bye.
I think Tom's got one more, and I think this year is the year.
Buy, sell, or hold. Kyler Murray will be the number 1 overall pick.
Vegas has the Dolphins getting him at 13, but I think they'll move that. I think that Steve Keim, who was on our show earlier, will not draft Kyler Murray, and this is why. Because it would be acknowledging that last year's pick, number 10, Josh Rosen, didn't pan out. And I think there's real pressure in Arizona. Steve Keim's got to deliver. I also think Steve Keim would, like to have Nick Bosa. They need an edge rusher. So, John.
Sell.
I think the Giants or Jacksonville may move up, but I doubt it. I don't think Kyler at this point goes number 1.
Buy, sell, or hold. LeBron will miss the playoffs for the first time since his 2nd season in the NBA.
Well, John, according to Basketball Reference, which I trust, he has 3.5% chance to make the playoffs, meaning they have a better chance to be a top 3 lottery pick.
Is that good?
Not great. They're in 10th in the West, and they're 3 back of the number 8 spot, and one of those teams is Sacramento, and Sacramento's better than the Lakers and has a better locker room. I was also told this last night. Luke and LeBron's not good. It just doesn't. There's not a lot of trust. Luke Walton doesn't think LeBron has his back, and LeBron, frankly, doesn't have his back. And barring a miraculous run here, Luke Walton, there's a very high probability he may be a college basketball coach somewhere. Don't kid yourself in the Pac-12. Couple of places he's familiar with. But, John,
Bye.
I think this morning it does not feel like the Lakers and LeBron. The chemistry with Luke and LeBron, I'm not pointing fingers here, it ain't great. And if it's not between your star and your coach, Kyrie and Brad Stevens, you got a problem.
Buy, sell, or hold. The Thunder will reach the Western Conference Finals.
Well, last 2 years, Oklahoma City is 3-8 in the playoffs, but they have Paul George. The problem being is Paul George is their best shooter. And as much as I like Paul George, I think you could name him MVP, or if at worst, after Giannis, second best. Paul doesn't have a history of being a great deliverer in the playoffs. And I like Paul George a lot. I think right now he's the best available two-way player in the league. Kawhi Leonard misses too many games. So I'm a huge Paul George fan. But he's not been great in the playoffs. Westbrook, by the way, now a poor free throw shooter, is not trustable late in games at the free throw line. And by the way, they're 0-3 against the Nuggets this year. It's not the end of the world, but they don't necessarily match up with some of the top teams. So, John,
Sell.
I don't think the Thunder make the Western Conference Finals.
Last one, buy, sell, or hold. Kyrie Irving will stay with the Celtics.
Well, they're 9-2 without him. And I always feel like when you're making a decision on people, you take that yellow pad and you write down pros and cons. Here are the cons. Kyrie gets hurt a lot. Kyrie won't commit. Kyrie's kind of flaky. And we're not better with him than without him. That is a lot of checks not for Kyrie Irving. He's a free agent at the end of the season. And listen, you can generally tell. Like Kawhi Leonard right now, he said it's cold in Toronto. But he seems to be liking it. Kyrie Irving doesn't appear to be liking Boston. So, John?
Sell.
I don't think he's with the Celtics next year. For the record, I think Boston's going to be okay without him. They'll be fine. They'll find a point guard. They have Tatum. They have Horford. They have the coach. They have a bench. They have the arena. They have the fans. They have the draft picks. I just don't feel there's too much smoke here, too much flirting here. I don't think he'll be a Celtic next year. And Boston will be okay. Albert Breer is at the NFL Combine. That's great. That's coming up around the corner, so don't go anywhere. We love Albert, and we love the NFL Combine. When the tough weather hits, we're a little past 50% of the weather. For the record, Joy, did you know this? It's going to rain tomorrow in Los Angeles and over the weekend. So that means there's going to be more snow in Colorado, in Utah, in Montana, in